Ms. Hartman observed Adrienne Moss, an African-American woman, approach her station dressed casually and immediately regarded her with suspicion before any verbal exchange commenced. When Ms. Moss presented $20,000 in banded $20 bills and indicated her intention to make a deposit, Jessica neglected to process the transaction. Instead, she initiated an inquiry regarding the origin of the funds, remarking, "Individuals such as yourself do not typically execute deposits of this magnitude." She then demanded identification before departing from her post to report suspected financial impropriety or illicit proceeds. Upon the arrival of Officer Dennis Cole, he treated Ms. Moss as a suspect, issuing stern commands, threatening incarceration, and disregarding her explanations. When she finally identified herself as the chief executive officer of the financial institution, both Ms. Hartman and Officer Cole dismissed her assertion as an untruth. Subsequently, Officer Cole placed Ms. Moss in handcuffs in the center of the banking hall. Unbeknownst to either of them, and about to be revealed in a profoundly embarrassing manner, was that Adrienne Moss was indeed speaking the truth, and that their racially biased presumptions had just irrevocably jeopardized both of their careers and would ultimately cost the city in excess of $1 million. Before we proceed, from which city or country are you viewing this presentation? Kindly share this information in the comments section below. We are eager to discover our audience's locations. Furthermore, if you firmly believe that no individual should be subjected to the treatment of a criminal for conducting a legitimate banking transaction solely based on their ethnicity, please express your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Adrienne Moss had been awake since 5 in the morning. She had flown into Charlotte from New York that very morning for a scheduled quarterly business review at the regional headquarters. This was a customary visit, one she undertook 4 times annually to assess branch performance, confer with district managers, and deliberate on expansion strategies. Her assistant, Maya, had meticulously organized her schedule with a series of back-to-back appointments commencing at 11 in the morning. However, Adrienne had one personal matter she wished to attend to first. She was carrying $20,000 in cash within her leather satchel. These funds were designated for a property acquisition that was scheduled to finalize later that week. Rather than retain possession of this sum through subsequent meetings and a flight back to New York, she opted to deposit it that morning. She sent a text message to Maya stating, "Making a detour to the Charlotte branch for a swift deposit. I will join you at the office afterward." This brief stop was projected to take no more than 5 minutes. Adrienne Moss, age 47, had dedicated 22 years of her professional life to ascending through the ranks of Dominion Federal Bank. Her career began as a branch manager in Brooklyn, progressed to regional director in Philadelphia, and then to executive vice president in Boston. 6 years prior, she was appointed as the chief executive officer of the entire organization, overseeing 340 branches spanning 12 states. The Charlotte branch she was about to enter, she had personally sanctioned its construction budget 3 years earlier. However, on this particular morning, her attire did not reflect her executive status. She was dressed for comfort, prioritizing it over a polished appearance when not addressing a large audience. Her ensemble consisted of dark denim jeans, a black blazer, white athletic footwear, and a leather bag slung over her shoulder. Her reading glasses were neatly tucked into her pocket. The only adornment she wore was a wristwatch, a gift from her father upon her promotion to vice president. She entered the Dominion Federal Bank branch situated on West Trade Street at precisely 9:47 in the morning. After joining the queue behind 4 other patrons, she patiently awaited her turn, just like every other individual. The banking hall was abuzz with the morning rush, with customers depositing checks, withdrawing funds, and initiating new accounts. The tellers behind the counter efficiently processed transactions with practiced ease. Adrienne observed their work, mentally noting areas for potential improvement. The customer wait times appeared reasonable, though the signage could benefit from greater clarity. Additionally, one of the deposit slip dispensers was empty. When her turn arrived, she approached the counter where a young woman, identified by her name tag as Jessica Hartman, sat behind the protective glass partition. Ms. Hartman, with her blonde hair secured in a tight ponytail and possessing sharp features, had been employed at this branch for 4 years. During her tenure, she had cultivated distinct notions about the typical profile of customers who made substantial deposits and those who might be engaged in illicit activities. Her supervisors had received documented complaints from customers of minority backgrounds. Over the years, 4 separate grievances had been filed, each alleging differential treatment, more aggressive questioning, and assumptions based on outward appearance. These complaints, although formally registered, had been effectively disregarded. Jessica looked up as Adrian approached, and the instant she recognized the individual standing before her, a black woman clad in jeans and athletic shoes, a noticeable shift occurred in her demeanor. Her gaze shifted from Adrian's face to her attire, and then to the well-worn leather bag slung across her shoulder. The professional cordiality that had been present moments before evaporated, replaced by something far less welcoming. "Good morning," Adrian greeted with a smile. "I would like to make a deposit." Jessica's response was curt and devoid of warmth. "Account card." Adrian placed it on the counter. Jessica retrieved it, gave it a cursory glance without truly reading it, and set it aside. "What are you depositing today?" Adrian opened her bag and retrieved a stack of currency. $20,000, neatly banded in $20 denominations, was presented. She placed the money on the counter between them. Jessica's gaze fixated on the cash. Her eyes lingered on it for a considerable duration before returning to Adrian's face. "That's a substantial amount of cash," Jessica commented. "It is," Adrian replied calmly. "Where did you acquire it?" The question felt out of place. Adrian had conducted hundreds of deposits over her career at numerous branches across the country, and no teller had ever initiated an interaction in such a manner. She maintained her composure. "I am depositing it into my account. That is all the information required to process the transaction." Jessica leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "People like you do not typically make deposits of this nature, not when dressed in that manner." There it was. Adrian felt the weight of Jessica's words settle in the air between them, and she understood with absolute clarity what "people like you" signified. She had encountered variations of this sentiment throughout her life, in boardrooms, during interviews, and in environments where her presence was judged and deemed incongruous before she had even spoken. Nevertheless, she remained composed. "I would like to proceed with my deposit. Could you please process it?" "I must verify your identity first. You provided your account card. I require to see your identification." Adrian's gaze flickered to her left. The patron who had been ahead of her in line, a Caucasian male in his 50s wearing a polo shirt, had deposited what appeared to be a similar sum of cash merely 3 minutes prior. Jessica had not requested identification from him, nor had she questioned the provenance of his funds. She had completed his transaction in under 2 minutes, offering a smile as he departed. Adrian turned her attention back to Jessica. "You did not request identification from the customer before me." Jessica's jaw tightened perceptibly. "That is protocol. I must verify your identity before I can proceed." Adrian withdrew her driver's license from her wallet and placed it on the counter without further comment. Jessica picked it up and scrutinized it intently. Her eyes narrowed as she read the name, Adrian Moss. The name did not register. The face was unfamiliar. Jessica Hartman had been employed at this branch for 4 years, which in her estimation was ample time to become acquainted with every high-value client who frequented the establishment. Sufficient time, in her mind, to discern the difference between those who belonged and those who did not. She looked at Adrian once more. Casual attire, $20,000 in cash, and an unfamiliar name. Jessica made a decision. I need to verify this further before I can proceed. Kindly wait a moment. She stood up, taking Adrian his identification and account card with her, and walked away from the counter towards the back office. Adrian remained at the counter, awaiting. The stack of cash remained on the counter, untouched. 1 minute elapsed, then 2, then 5. Other customers in the queue cast curious glances, sensing a disquieting atmosphere. The teller at the adjacent station appeared uneasy but maintained a downward gaze, remaining silent. At the 7-minute mark, Adrian checked her watch. 9:54 a.m. Her next appointment was scheduled for 11 o'clock. This was taking an inordinate amount of time. In the back office, Jessica Hartman was speaking on her mobile phone in a hushed, urgent tone to a 911 dispatcher. There is a black woman at Dominion Federal Bank on West Trade Street attempting to deposit what I suspect is stolen or drug money. She has $20,000 in cash, and her explanation is not credible. You need to dispatch an officer immediately. She provided the address and terminated the call, remaining in the back office. Adrian stood at the counter for an additional 3 minutes. It was then that she observed a police cruiser pulling up outside. Officer Dennis Cole emerged from the vehicle, adjusted his utility belt, and entered the bank with an air of authority, conveying the impression that he had already formed an opinion about the situation he was about to encounter. He was in his mid-30s, with 9 years of service on the force, and had responded to similar calls previously. Reports of suspicious individuals, people who seemed out of place, and unusual amounts of cash. He surveyed the lobby, and his attention was drawn to Adrian, the sole black woman standing at the counter. He proceeded directly toward her. Jessica emerged from the back office at the same instant. Upon spotting Officer Cole, she pointed at Adrian and announced, in a voice loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear, "That is her, the one attempting to deposit illegal funds." Every patron in the building turned to observe. Adrian remained perfectly still, neither moving nor speaking. She simply looked at Jessica, then at Officer Cole, and a profound realization dawned upon her. The situation was about to escalate significantly before any resolution could be reached. Cole stopped directly in front of her, his hands resting on his belt. "Ma'am, where did you acquire this cash?" Adrian opened her mouth to respond. Cole interrupted her before she could speak, his voice sharp and loud enough to be heard throughout the lobby. "Consider your answer very carefully, Mom. I am weary of your kind, constantly engaging in criminal activities." Adrian stood at the counter, with 30 individuals observing her, and a police officer who had just expressed his disdain for her demographic, demanding an explanation for currency that rightfully belonged to her. She took a deep breath, maintained a steady tone, and stated the undeniable truth. "The money is mine. I have earned it. I am here to deposit it into my account. I do not comprehend the reason for this inquiry." Officer Dennis Cole's expression remained unchanged. He regarded her with the detached skepticism one reserves for a falsehood encountered repeatedly. "What is occurring here is that individuals like yourself do not typically possess $20,000 in cash unless it has been acquired through illicit means, such as theft or fraud. You will either provide a satisfactory explanation for the origin of these funds immediately, or you will be placed under arrest." Jessica stepped closer to the counter, her arms still crossed, nodding in agreement. "I am familiar with all of our clientele. I have been employed here for 4 years. I recognize their appearances and their attire." She gestured dismissively at Adrian's jeans and athletic shoes with undisguised contempt. Someone dressed as she is cannot possibly be in possession of such a sum of money unless it is stolen or illicitly obtained. Adrian felt the confines of the space pressing in, yet she did not raise her voice. She met Cole's gaze directly and articulated the thought that had been forming in her mind since his arrival. "Is this due to my race?" Cole's countenance immediately hardened. "There it is. Your kind always resorts to the race card the moment you are apprehended. Your behavior is repugnant to me." He extended his hand. "Identification now." Adrian had already presented her driver's license to Jessica, but Jessica was holding it as if it were evidence rather than a document of identification. Cole snatched it from Jessica's grasp and examined it with the same skepticism that Jessica had displayed. He read the name, Adrian Moss, and it held no significance for him. He noted the address, then looked at Adrian, his expression clearly indicating that he had already reached a conclusion about her character. "What is your occupation?" "I am a businesswoman," Adrian replied. Cole emitted a brief, derisive chuckle. Indeed, a businesswoman. He turned to Jessica. "Did she specify the nature of her business?" Jessica shook her head. "She has been evasive regarding all details since her arrival." Adrian interjected, her voice firm but not raised. "I have not been evasive about anything. My sole intention was to make a deposit. That is all I have attempted to do." Cole completely disregarded her statement. He activated his radio and spoke into it, maintaining direct eye contact with Adrian. "Running an ID check. Stand by." He then looked back at her, his hand resting on his belt, near his handcuffs. "Do not move from this spot. Do you understand me?" Adrian gave a single nod. In that moment, as Cole awaited the results of the identification check, while Jessica stood behind the counter with an air of satisfaction, and as every patron in the lobby observed the unfolding scene, Adrian withdrew her phone from her pocket and quickly typed a message. "Being detained at Charlotte Branch, police called on me, accused of depositing illegal money. Come now, full security." She pressed send and discreetly returned the phone to her pocket. Cole's radio crackled. The voice on the other end confirmed what Adrian already knew. "ID is clean. No warrants, no priors, nothing." Cole looked at the radio as if it had provided him with incorrect information. He then turned his attention back to Adrian, and instead of offering an apology or reconsidering his actions, he intensified his stance. "You are being detained for further verification. We are proceeding to the station to resolve this matter." Adrian's voice was calm, yet a steely resolve underpinned it. "You are arresting me for what? For suspected fraud and failure to provide adequate explanation for the source of funds. I have informed you that the money is mine. My identification is clear. You have no probable cause." Cole moved closer. "I have ample cause. Now turn around." Adrian remained immobile. "I am not going anywhere. I need to inform you of something, and you need to listen." Cole's hand moved toward his handcuffs. "Turn around. This is your final warning." Adrian spoke rapidly and distinctly, looking directly into his eyes. "My name is Adrian Moss. I am the General Chief Executive Officer of Dominion Federal Bank. This institution, the very one you are currently occupying. I arrived from New York this morning specifically to make a deposit at my own establishment." She reached into her bag and produced her official CEO identification card, bearing her photograph, her title, and the Dominion Federal Bank insignia prominently displayed at the top. She held it up for both Officer Cole and Miss Hartman to examine. Jessica looked at the card, then at Adrian, and then she let out a laugh. It was loud, sharp, and dismissive. The CEO is in New York, and she would never be someone dressed as you are. That is a falsehood." Cole glanced at the identification card, chuckled, and shook his head. "No surprise. Individuals like you will fabricate anything to evade arrest. Do you presume I am gullible?" Adrian attempted to speak again, to offer an explanation, but Cole had ceased listening. He grasped her arm, spun her around, and pulled her hands behind her back. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked into place around her wrists, and Adrian felt their weight, not merely the physical burden, but the profound significance of that moment. She was standing in her own bank, within a building whose construction budget she had personally approved, in a lobby where her executive portrait was displayed in the back corridor, and she was being apprehended because a teller and a police officer were incapable of comprehending that a black woman in casual attire could hold a position of authority. Cole's voice, low and satisfied, was in her ear. "You are under arrest for suspected fraud and obstruction. You have the right to remain silent." Adrian did not remain silent. Her voice resonated throughout the entire lobby. "I am the chief executive officer of this bank. My assistant is en route. You are making the most egregious error of your professional career." Jessica walked from behind the counter towards the pile of cash still resting on the countertop. Cole gestured towards it. "Bag that currency. We will require it as evidence." Jessica retrieved a large plastic evidence bag and commenced placing the banded bills within it, handling them as if they were contraband rather than legitimate funds belonging to a lawful account holder. Adrian observed this action, watched Cole stand beside her with one hand firmly on Adrian's arm, and understood that neither of them believed a single word she had spoken. A patron standing near the entrance, a middle-aged woman who had been silently observing the entire interaction, produced her mobile phone and began recording. Another customer, a gentleman in a business suit, interjected, "Officer, I believe you should verify her statement before escorting her from the premises." Cole immediately turned his attention to him. "Sir, please step back. This matter does not concern you." The man held his ground. "I am merely suggesting that she has been composed throughout this entire ordeal. She is cooperating. Perhaps you should investigate further. Step back now." The man complied, but he did not put away his phone. Cole steered Adrian towards the door, his grip on her arm unyielding. Jessica had completed bagging the money and was holding it as if it were a prize. Adrian surveyed the lobby one last time, noting the customers watching, the tellers behind the counter who appeared uncomfortable but remained silent, Jessica, who looked vindicated, and Cole, who appeared to have just closed a significant case. Then she heard it. The distinct sound of car doors slamming outside. Multiple car doors closing simultaneously. Cole also registered the sound. He paused, his hand still on Adrian's arm, and turned towards the main entrance. 3 black SUVs had pulled up directly in front of the bank, parked at sharp angles as if they had arrived with urgency. The doors opened in unison, and 6 men clad in dark suits disembarked. They moved with practiced precision and purpose. Leading them, walking with haste, a tablet in hand, and an expression locked in palpable fury, was Maya Chen. She pushed through the front doors of the bank, and her eyes immediately found Adrian, handcuffed, standing beside a police officer in the midst of the lobby. Maya's voice cut through the entire building like a sharp blade. "Release that woman immediately!" Maya Chen did not await a response. She crossed the lobby in 6 swift strides, her heels striking the marble floor with a sound like gunshots, and the 6 men in black suits fanned out behind her in a formation that unmistakably conveyed they were not present for negotiation. She stopped 3 feet from Officer Dennis Cole, looked at Adrian standing in handcuffs, and then turned her full attention to Cole with an expression that could have stripped paint from a wall. "Do you have any awareness of whom you have just handcuffed?" Cole's grip on Adriana's arm tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. He had encountered agitated family members before, angry friends, disgruntled lawyers, and he was not about to be intimidated by a woman holding a tablet and accompanied by a security detail. "Madam, please step back. This is an official arrest." Maya did not step back. She advanced closer. "I posed a question to you, officer. Do you comprehend the identity of this woman? She is under arrest for suspected fraud and failure to provide identification. Her name is Adrian Moss." Maya's voice escalated, now loud enough for every individual in the lobby to hear every word. "She is the General Chief Executive Officer of Dominion Federal Bank. This bank, the one in which you are currently standing, the one that employs every individual behind that counter, the one whose emblem adorns your uniform because your department conducts its banking here." Cole's expression flickered for a brief instant, but he quickly regained his composure. "She made that claim. I do not find it credible." Maya raised her tablet and directed it towards Cole's face. Displayed on the screen was Adriana's executive profile from the Dominion Federal Bank website. Her photograph, identical to the face Cole was currently observing. Her title, General Chief Executive Officer, Dominion Federal Bank. Her biography detailed 22 years of service with the corporation, 6 years as CEO, and oversight of 340 branches across 12 states. Cole stared intently at the screen. His hand remained on Adrian's arm, but his fingers had loosened their grip slightly. Maya then turned the tablet to display its contents for Jessica, who was still positioned behind the counter, holding the bag of cash as if she had just successfully solved a major crime. "You alerted law enforcement to her presence. Your chief executive officer, the very woman at the helm of this entire organization." Jessica's countenance drained of color, yet her lips parted, a torrent of defensive words spilling forth. "I was unaware." She offered no explanation. She simply entered, attired as she was, and she identified herself. Mia's tone was frigid and precise. She presented you with identification. She explained her intention to make a deposit, and you presumed her to be a wrongdoer based on her attire and the hue of her skin. Jessica attempted to interject. "I was merely exercising due diligence. I've been employed here for 4 years, and I'm acquainted with our clientele. You are familiar with your customers." Mia turned to one of the security officers standing behind her and gave a subtle nod. He advanced, retrieved a folder from his briefcase, and handed it to Mia. She opened it, her gaze never leaving Jessica's. "Allow me to elucidate what I have ascertained regarding you, Jessica Hartman. You have been a staff member at this financial institution for 4 years. During that 4-year tenure, there have been 4 official grievances lodged against you by customers from minority backgrounds. Each of those 4 grievances cited identical conduct: excessive inquiries, demands for supplementary identification, and accusations of fraudulent dealings. All 4 of these complaints were duly noted by your supervisor and subsequently dismissed as mere misunderstandings." Jessica's complexion shifted from pale to alabaster. Maya continued her perusal. 2 months ago, a gentleman of African descent attempted to deposit $8,000 in cash. You interrogated him for 15 minutes, requested 3 forms of identification, and suggested his involvement in illicit activities. He lodged a complaint. It was dismissed. 3 months prior to that, a woman of Latina heritage attempted to cash a check for $12,000. You compelled her to wait for 30 minutes while you authenticated the check, despite it being drawn on an account held within this very bank. She lodged a complaint. It was dismissed. Maya closed the folder and regarded Jessica as if she were observing something that had been left to decay in the scorching sun. "You exhibit a pattern, Jessica, and today you perpetuated it yet again. Except this time, the individual you targeted was not merely another patron, she was your superior." Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Cole finally spoke, his voice having lost some of its earlier conviction. She did not present herself appropriately. Had she merely stated her identity from the outset, Maya spun toward him with the speed of a whip. "She informed you that she was the chief executive officer. You derided her openly. She lacked corroboration. She presented you with her CEO identification card. You dismissed it as falsehood." Cole's jaw clenched. He glanced down at Adriana's identification card, which still lay on the counter where he had discarded it after deeming it inauthentic. Maya approached, retrieved it, and held it directly before his face. Official Dominion Federal Bank CEO credentials. Adrian's name, Adrian's likeness, the corporate seal embossed in opulent gold. "Does this appear to you as a fabrication, Officer Cole?" Cole remained silent. Maya gestured to the surrounding walls. "Do you observe that corridor situated behind the teller stations? The one leading to the executive offices?" She pointed. "Proceed down that corridor at this precise moment. The third entryway on your right. There is a portrait of every chief executive officer this bank has ever employed. Adrian Moss holds the 7th position. Her likeness is displayed on that wall. It has been there for 6 years. Cole did not move. One of the customers who had been documenting the entire encounter interjected from near the entryway. "I will go and verify." He proceeded toward the corridor, vanished for 10 seconds, and then returned. "She is correct. There is an entire wall adorned with portraits back there. Adrian Moss, General CEO. Her image is displayed directly beside that of the institution's founder." The lobby was utterly devoid of sound. Maya turned back to Cole. "Release her immediately." Cole hesitated. His hand still rested on Adriana's arm, and the handcuffs remained clasped around her wrists, placing him in the midst of a rapidly evolving and completely reversed situation. He looked at Jessica as if she might offer a statement that would render this scenario comprehensible once more. Jessica averted her gaze to the floor. Cole reached for his keys and unlocked the handcuffs. Adrian brought her hands forward and gently rubbed her wrist where the metallic restraints had been. She remained silent for the moment, simply standing and breathing softly as Cole stepped back, attempting to ascertain what to do with his hands. Maya was not yet finished. She addressed Jessica directly. "You contacted 911 and reported suspected fraudulent activity. You informed the dispatcher that a woman of African descent was attempting to deposit stolen or drug-related currency. You made that call without substantiating a single detail. You made that call because you observed a black woman in casual attire and concluded that she was an offender." Jessica's voice emerged, small and trembling. "I was merely endeavoring to safeguard the bank." "You were attempting to safeguard the bank." Maya repeated the words deliberately, as if savoring their flavor, from its own chief executive officer. Jessica offered no rejoinder. Adrian finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, yet it resonated throughout the entire lobby, and every individual within that building heard every utterance. "I entered my own bank this morning with the intention of making a straightforward deposit. I waited in line just like every other patron. I reached the counter and was treated as a suspect from the very first instant, not due to any wrongdoing on my part, not because my funds were questionable, not because I was unable to furnish identification, but because you perceived a black woman in casual clothing and determined that I did not belong here." She directed her gaze at Jessica. "You questioned me. You demanded my identification. You left me standing at that counter for 10 minutes while you contacted the authorities and reported me for a transgression I did not commit. And when I informed you of my identity, you laughed." Then she turned her attention to Cole. "You arrived here already convinced of my culpability. You addressed me with aggression. You menaced me. You declared that you were weary of my kind. You ran my identification, and it returned clear. And you still opted to apprehend me. And when I told you that I was the chief executive officer of this financial institution, you labeled me a liar and placed me in handcuffs." She held up her wrists, where the red impressions from the restraints were still discernible. "I have dedicated 22 years to cultivating a career within this industry. I have worked in branches comparable to this one. I have processed deposits akin to the one I attempted to make today. I have interacted with customers, with employees, with regulatory bodies, with governing boards, and with investors. I have conducted myself impeccably, and today I was apprehended within my own establishment because 2 individuals observed me and perceived a criminal rather than a chief executive officer. The silence in the lobby was absolute." Adrian turned to Jessica. "You are terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises." Jessica's eyes widened. "Wait, please, I did not intend—" "You intended precisely what you executed. You have been engaged in this behavior for 4 years. It concludes now." 2 of the individuals in dark suits advanced toward Jessica. She surveyed the lobby, hoping for someone to intervene and rescue her, but no one moved. The other tellers behind the counter averted their gazes. The branch manager, who had finally emerged from his office during the disruption, remained silent. Jessica was escorted from the building, her hands trembling and her face streaked with tears. Adrian turned to Cole. "You will be hearing from my legal representative. I am initiating a federal civil rights lawsuit and will be pursuing your dismissal and a comprehensive inquiry into your conduct." Cole attempted to speak. "Ma'am, I was responding to a call. I was unaware. You did not pay heed. There is a distinction." Maya stepped forward and returned to Adrian's handbag, her identification, and her CEO card. Adrian accepted them, slung the bag over her shoulder, and surveyed the lobby one final time. She observed the customers who had witnessed the entire episode, the tellers who had maintained their silence, and the counter where her $20,000 still rested in an evidence bag. She walked over, retrieved the bag, opened it, and withdrew the cash. She placed it on the counter in front of the branch manager, who appeared as though he wished to vanish into the floor. Processed the deposit. He nodded rapidly, his hands fumbling with the currency. Adrian turned and walked toward the exit. Maya and the security detail followed behind her. And as she stepped out into the morning sunlight, every person in that lobby understood precisely what they had just witnessed. The conclusion of 2 careers and the commencement of an accounting. The video was ubiquitous by midday. 4 separate patrons had recorded the occurrence from 4 distinct vantage points, and by the time Adrian's legal team disseminated the official statement, the footage had already been viewed over 8 million times. By the conclusion of the week, it had reached 40 million. Every prominent news outlet covered the story with variations of the same headline: CEO in handcuffs within her own bank. Black executive apprehended for depositing cash. Racist teller summons police on superior. The image that gained the most traction was a freeze frame from one of the videos depicting Adrian standing in handcuffs in the middle of the Dominion Federal Bank lobby. Adjacent to her stood Jessica Hartman, behind the counter, holding the bag of money as if it were evidence. Jessica Hartman was dismissed within 6 hours of the incident. Dominion Federal Bank issued a statement denouncing her actions as a violation of company policy and federal anti-discrimination legislation, and announced that she would be ineligible for re-employment at any of their branches. However, the termination was merely the beginning. Adrian's legal team, in collaboration with the district attorney's office, filed criminal charges against Jessica for submitting a false police report. The case proceeded to trial 4 months later, and the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict. Jessica was sentenced to 6 months in county jail and 2 years of probation. She was also permanently prohibited from working in the banking industry at the age of 26, with a criminal record and her name irrevocably linked to one of the most widely disseminated videos of racial profiling in the nation. Jessica Hartman's career was extinguished before it had truly commenced. Officer Dennis Cole's repercussions arrived with equal swiftness. He was placed on administrative leave on the same day as the incident, and the Charlotte Police Department initiated an internal investigation that revealed a pattern of behavior they could no longer disregard. Over his 9 years on the force, Cole had been the subject of 8 formal complaints pertaining to racially biased policing. All 8 complaints had been investigated and cleared. However, when examined collectively as a pattern rather than isolated incidents, the image became unmistakable. Cole had a history of treating Black and Latino residents with suspicion, aggression, and disrespect. His body camera footage from the bank clearly showed him telling Adrian he was weary of her kind, and that statement alone was sufficient to contravene multiple department policies. He was terminated 3 weeks subsequent to the incident. His appeal was denied. At the age of 35, with no other law enforcement agency willing to employ him and his name associated with a viral video, Dennis Cole's career in policing was concluded. Adrian initiated the federal civil rights lawsuit against Officer Cole and the city of Charlotte 2 weeks after the incident. The lawsuit sought $1.1 million in damages and stipulated mandatory systemic reforms to prevent analogous incidents from occurring in the future. The charges encompassed unlawful detention, false arrest, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, and racial discrimination. The city's legal team reviewed the evidence, including multiple videos, witness testimonies, body camera footage, Cole's history of complaints, and Jessica's documented pattern of discriminatory conduct, and made the decision to settle rather than proceed to trial. They recognized that no jury would align with their position. The settlement was finalized for the full $1.1 million within 4 months, and it was accompanied by a list of mandatory reforms that Adrian had insisted upon. The Charlotte Police Department implemented new training protocols on implicit bias, established an independent review board for discrimination complaints, and mandated that all officers must verify claims before effecting arrests in cases involving suspected fraud or financial offenses. Dominion Federal Bank also did not escape scrutiny. Adrian utilized the incident as a catalyst for company-wide transformation. She mandated bias training for all personnel at every branch, instituted a new framework for addressing customer grievances that included third-party oversight, and established quarterly evaluations of customer interactions segmented by race to identify patterns of discriminatory behavior before they escalated. 3 additional employees with complaint histories similar to Jessica's were quietly dismissed. The bank also issued a public apology and allocated $5 million to a fund dedicated to supporting victims of financial discrimination. 5 years later, Adrian Moss continues to serve as the General Chief Executive Officer of Dominion Federal Bank. She frequently addresses conferences regarding implicit bias within the financial sector and has emerged as a prominent advocate for racial equity in banking. Jessica Hartman is presently employed in retail, earning minimum wage. Her criminal record and widespread notoriety render it exceedingly difficult to secure stable employment. Officer Dennis Cole has not been engaged in law enforcement since his dismissal and has largely receded from public view. The Charlotte branch of Dominion Federal Bank now proudly displays a large portrait of Adrian Moss in its main lobby, visible to every customer and employee. Beneath the portrait is an inscribed plaque that reads, "Leadership is earned through service, and respect is owed to every person who walks through our doors." The lesson learned was costly, public, and enduring. A woman of African descent should never be compelled to justify her presence in a space she helped to establish. Presumptions based on race have exacted a toll on careers, on liberty, and on over $1 million. And at times, the sole method by which a system can learn is when the expenditure becomes too significant to overlook. If you believe that a chief executive officer should be able to make a deposit at her own financial institution without being subjected to treatment akin to that of a criminal, please share this narrative. In the comments section, articulate the changes you believe every bank should implement to prevent racial profiling, and if this account served as a reminder that dignity is not contingent upon a title, but rather on our shared humanity, please subscribe, as we are committed to continuing to recount these stories until assumptions cease to shatter lives.